The new DC Absolute Universe is a very interesting take on these pre-existing characters that we have all grown up with throughout our lives and flips them on their head. This universe takes fundamental aspects of the characters that define who they are and why they are so popular and flips them on their head to create a new character that contrasts directly against the pre-existing ones that we have all known throughout the years. For example, Batman, who's normally portrayed as the billionaire Bruce Wayne, who's the world's greatest detective, who has all the gadgets at his disposal, yada yada. In the Absolute Universe, this Bruce Wayne works at a steel mill, if I'm not mistaken, and his bat suit isn't a suit of armor, it's just a suit of cloth, and he has to, at his own disposal, create all of his high-tech gadgets to use and aid and assist in his detective work. That's fundamentally flipping and inversing exactly what is going on with the normal portrayal of Bruce Wayne or Batman, and I love it. The most interesting thing that I've seen in recent years is this new flip or inverse of comic book characters that are so popular and have been portrayed throughout countless amounts of media. Last month, I fell in love with the Ultimate Spider-Man run by John Hickman. There's only 10 issues out so far, and I made a video about it, but what I loved most about it is Spider-Man got his powers when he was like in his mid-30s. He's already married to MJ, he's got 2 kids, Uncle Ben is alive in this universe. Almost everything about Peter Parker and his life from what it normally is in other existing universes and portrayals is completely different in this Ultimate Universe, and I love it. Everything, at least in Spider-Man media, to my knowledge as a Spider-Man fan, has been so repetitive and stale throughout the years, and that's why I absolutely fell in love with the Ultimate Spider-Man run. And so why am I talking about all this? Well, today I want to see what would happen if the Avengers got that same treatment. For simplicity's sake, we're just going to go with the MCU's original 6 Avengers and dubbing them the Absolute Avengers because I love alliteration and it's easy. I want to see what the 6 Avengers would look like, at least if I was writing them. An absolute Iron Man, an absolute Captain America for all of the 6 Avengers, and so this is just a little experiment I'm doing to see what Absolute Avengers would look like if their origin story was tweaked just a little bit to flip them on their head and just completely rewrite the character, but still hold true to some of the values that makes the characters who they are and why we love them. I'm not going to have Steve Rogers become a murderer because that's not who he is. So without any further ado, let's just get straight into the MCU's most beloved hero, that being Iron Man. In the Marvel Absolute Universe, Tony Stark still gets captured by the terrorists that captured him originally. He still creates his Iron Man suit, but instead of following down the path that we all know, Tony does something a little different in this universe. The Absolute Iron Man builds the Mark I like normal, and when he escapes, he finally gets back to America and lays down low for a little bit. Realizing that what he had made and the now new power that he wields, Tony does what Tony always does. He starts working. Tony obsesses over the idea of using his suit to help others and vows to save as many people as he can since he was not able to save Yuri back in the cave. Tony, ridden with PTSD, makes his version of Ultron bots from his underground base and pilots and controls as many of them as possible at the exact same time. Instead of going out and flying them, he Neuralinks himself to all of his Iron Man suits, so when he attacks an organization or stops a mugging or does whatever he normally does, Tony is never alone. Because of how weak and powerless he felt being trapped in that cave, now that he's out of the cave, he will never fall victim to another attack, or at least not be the person in the room with the most control. Anytime Tony leaves his lair, he leaves with his legion of Iron Man bots. Think of back in Iron Man 3 when he remote piloted all of those suits, because that's exactly what he's going to be doing, except he's going to be doing it with his mind through like a Neuralink thing he came up with. He can control all of the suits at the same time and constantly swap between which suit of armor he is currently controlling. Even though his body is stuck physically in one Iron Man suit, the enemy or whoever's on the receiving end of Tony's attacks will never know which suit Tony is actually in. Therefore, instead of calling himself Iron Man, Tony's new name is now Iron Legion because he's not merely a man. He is a team being controlled by one mind. Admittedly, this was probably the weakest of the 6 that I've come up with. The Tony Stark one was so hard for me to try to switch and flip on its head because there's so many different adaptations of Tony being evil or being Doctor Doom or doing something different where Howard loves him and he didn't grow up without a father. All this different stuff. This was a little hard, but I like what I have where Iron Man, he's always, think of it kind of like Multiple Man. He's always an ever-growing like superhero with different versions of his suits out there, so whatever the challenge may be, he always has Igor or he has the Hulkbuster or whatever suit he might need for the current occasion. It's always right there with him and he can just swap. Kind of like when you're playing Lego video games and you can just swap between player 1 and player 2. That's exactly what Tony is doing, but with his suit in real time. I thought that was pretty interesting, but admittedly, all these others are way more interesting than that, so let's just go straight to Captain America. In the Absolute version of Steve Rogers, Steve goes AWOL. After signing up for the Super Soldier Serum and receiving his powers, Steve goes into battle like normal. Battle after battle, as Steve watches dozens of truckloads of men, including some of his best friends and his best friend since birth, Bucky Barnes, get obliterated day after day after day. Steve finally sees no reason to continue fighting this war. One night, after a particularly bloody battle where Steve is forced to go and kill a man for his first time, Steve is journaling and realizes that he can do much more with these newfound powers than fight in a stupid war that he has no interest in for a country that doesn't even care about him. Screw it, we're going to make Captain America an enemy of the US government. I know he's not going to be like a Hydra guy or whatever, but stick with me. Steve decides to tail it and run away in the middle of the night. After going AWOL, Steve makes it to a German military base and goes crazy and becomes a one-man army and takes down almost all of a German military base with just his bare hands. Steve steals a fighter jet and flies back to America, where he then crash lands in upstate New York until he dons the alias Captain America. Except this time the name is being used ironically as a big middle finger to the country that does nothing for the common man in his day except send them to wars overseas and die in a political battle that they have no interest in. During his time in the 40s, Steve is akin to a local legend, kind of like Batman, only being heard of but never actually seen by the public. Steve takes down crooked politicians and other crime along the way. Due to the Super Soldier Serum, Steve ages very slowly. Steve never got stuck in the ice. Instead, he is a traveling vigilante all throughout America, perpetually in his mid-30s, riding around on a motorcycle with a leather jacket, stopping whatever crime he sees and doing whatever he can in his power to make America the greatest country on earth. By the time we get to present day, Steve is in a position of power in Washington, D.C., taking down corruption from within underneath a new alias, working his way to become one day president. He has to be careful not to reveal the truth of his powers to anyone, but when duty calls, Steve steps up to the action. For most people, the legend of Captain America and Steve Rogers is just a tall tale that the local government tells. But for Steve, he is actually a figure within the U.S. government. Long story short with this one, Steve is inside the government in the local day and age who still has these powers, but because of his time throughout the years, he's in a position of authority, and he's the one that can actually make changes day in and day out to affect the little man, but he's also Captain America that can put the brass tacks on people and actually do physical damage to opponents when the time is needed. I love this idea that he never fought in the war, but he took his powers and became kind of justice for the common man, helping out the little guy wherever he could as kind of this urban legend, Bigfoot akin like super soldier cryptid. I don't know, I think that's really interesting. And then when we flash forward to present day, because he lived through so many years as a person, he's never really aged, and he's just a normal guy who's working his way up to become a government politician in hopes of one day being president. But he also has superpowers, so that dynamic is kind of like Victoria Newman and The Boys, and I think it's really interesting. For Absolute Thor, I think this one genuinely has the most potential to have such a drastic change from his normal counterpart. So I hope you guys like it. Oh, wait, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing. I'm trying to hit 1,000 subs by the end of the year, and we're really close to that. Back to the video. Thor and Loki crash landed to Earth way back in the day and land in Egypt thousands of years ago. Long story short, it turns out that Loki was the reason for Asgard being destroyed and sent the both of them crashing to Earth. Loki tries to harness dark magic to impress Odin back on Asgard, which results in it blowing up. In the middle of their despairs, when the two brothers land in Egypt, Loki ends up telling the truth to Thor, thinking that he's the only family or friend he might have left. In an epic battle between the two that breaks out, the local Egyptians see the two fighting and begin bowing down and worshiping to the two of them, saying that they are the two true gods. Seeing this as an opportunity for the both of them to finally claim the throne that they both desperately long for since Asgard is gone, thanks to Loki, they decide to cling to each other, and since they are actually family, they're all that they both have left. The brothers put aside their differences and govern the country of Egypt, along with taking down anyone who steps in their way. Thor and Loki journey throughout the thousands of years until we get to present day where World War III breaks out. All this has to do with the two brothers fighting and taking down the previously established Egyptian gods like Khonshu, who have all teamed up to take down Thor and Loki because they're jealous of the worship that these two brothers stole from them. This story, I think, is really interesting and has a lot of potential to take these two Norse gods, who are normally enemies, but make them super strong in their pact just to be there for each other, and pins them up against these otherwise known local Egyptian gods like Khonshu, which we could throw in Moon Knight and some of those other gods that I'm not familiar with, and have this like religious battle between these two different religions with sorcery and power and magic. I don't know. I think this could be akin to a very interesting like Doctor Strange story, except we're having these different gods from different religions mash up in the Marvel universe, where both of them are like teaming up for the first time, Thor and Loki, against these gods that hate them because they're jealous jealous that they can't get the worship from the locals, and then all this culminating into Loki and Thor having their own empire for once, while teaming up, both being kings. I think that's awesome. One of the biggest changes in the original 6 Avengers in this story is going to be Bruce and Hulk, and you're going to see why. I'm going to change Bruce Banner into someone who is ridiculed for his gift of intelligence at a young age, eventually turning him into a psychopath who struggles to find the balance of getting revenge and going too far. Bruce uses his intellect to harm others, get revenge, and cause others to feel the pain that he so deeply felt for being different all these years ago. Bruce uses his mind to create inventions just to cause harm to whoever he deems fit for the punishment, and causes chaos for the sake of having power. One day, during one of Bruce's inventions, an accident occurs, resulting in Bruce getting absolutely blasted with different gamma radiation, resulting in him creating his alter ego that manifests in the form of the Incredible Hulk. In this version of the story, the Hulk is fully conscious and uses all of his powers and intelligence to try and stop and undo the harm that Bruce, on the other side, has been releasing into the world. In the World War III plot of this overarching story of the Absolute Avengers, Bruce is the main leader of the Legion of Doom and is trying to find a way to contain the Hulk from coming out and stopping him, but he can't, so it's a constant back and forth between the two. I think this is really interesting because Hulk keeps manifesting himself out of Bruce, but instead of it being this big rage monster that's going to unleash havoc, it's actually the good guy of the dynamic between the two, because once the Hulk comes out, the Hulk undoes all the evil that Bruce Banner has done. I think that's super interesting. I'd like to think of the dynamic between these two kind of like Bruce is like a mix between like Cletus Cassidy, Carnage, and the Maker, just this super intelligent guy, but he just wants chaos for the sake of chaos. Where the Hulk is almost like the Sentry, where he has those two sides, where one is pure and good and one is evil, and there's a dynamic clash between the two. I think that would be really interesting, and putting Bruce, who's normally on the back burner in the Hulk stories, put him in the limelight. He is the villain. He is the super bad guy. He's the one doing all the evil in the world, and the Hulk, who's normally looked at as just like this rage ball of monster, is like Professor Hulk. He's fully sentient, fully conscious, and he's the one trying to undo what he sees as his self, because technically they're the two, as doing all these evil crimes against humanity and against the world. So the Hulk is the hero in this story instead of Bruce, for his intelligence in this story is actually the Horcrux of all of it. For Natasha Romanoff, her story is a little different. In this universe, she never defects to S.H.I.E.L.D. Instead, she continues her life as a Russian spy and an assassin. One day, she gets a letter from an anonymous source asking her to track down and assassinate this rumored beast called the Hulk. In the middle of a Russian forest, she goes off to investigate. After watching the horrific transformation of the Hulk into a global terrorist that everyone in the world knows as Dr. Bruce Banner, Natasha comes up with her own plan. Her plan is to gain the trust of Dr. Banner and to become someone important on her team in order to see what is finally going on with this Hulk beast she was sent to kill. After countless tries, she finally proves herself worthy to Dr. Banner and becomes his right-hand woman. Meanwhile, the whole time, Natasha knows that what she's helping Banner do is wrong, but who is she to try and stop him? She's just an assassin. Bruce is a genius. Over the years, she seduces Banner, and the two of them become more than just partners. They work together and they learn more and more about each other, and she learns about all of his evil plans that he has for the world. Natasha begins to use all of her skill set to keep tabs on Dr. Banner without him having any idea. The goal of all of this is to one day take him down, but she's gonna need help. She can't do this by herself. She dons herself with the codename Black Widow as she goes out and tries to recruit others to help take down this madman. The name is a reference toward a spider that eats its own mate, backstabbing Dr. Banner in the process. One day, when Black Widow witnesses Dr. Banner transform back into the Hulk obviously being the smarter personality between the two of them, tells her that Banner actually knows what she's doing, and she's going to get herself killed. The two of them come up with a plan to take down Banner once and for all, but they need to come up with a way to stop Dr. Banner from becoming the Hulk, so the Hulk does not die and that they can take down Banner. And it's at this point in the story where I think all of the Absolute Avengers can be pulled across from the different sides of the world to come and take down Dr. Banner, who's ultimately like the mustache man from World War II Germany in this universe, and Natasha, who's normally, in my opinion, from what I've seen, a lesser importance character in the Avengers. She's the one that actually like recruits all of the Avengers, and I think that's really interesting, and it's a different dynamic on the relationship that her and Bruce have had in the past, where she's in love with the Hulk, but Hulk's alter ego is evil, and so tying the two of them in their own origin stories together I think is pretty interesting. Lastly, let's go into my favorite of the six in this story, that being Hawkeye. In this universe, Clint Barton is a world-renowned superhuman athlete known for his Red Bull trick-shotting YouTube videos to his worldwide ultra marathons. Clint can do anything and kill anyone with anything. If you give him a pencil and a room full of fully armed Hydra agents, this famous YouTuber and movie star Clint Barton will come out alive with all of them taken down. I think of this version of Clint as a very interesting dynamic, and he's more akin to like Johnny Cage from Mortal Kombat. With the success of his online videos, superhuman abilities, and the countless hunting records that he has, along with him also being an A-list movie star, Clint Barton is one of the most wealthy individuals alive, and by far one of the most popular ones as well. If there's a task that Clint wants to get done, he will get it done. If someone tells him he can't climb Mount Everest in 3 days, the dude will do it in 1. No challenge is too big for this version of Clint Barton. This guy is like peak superhuman athlete, but also a famous actor and like a lethal hunter that can do anything, sort of like Craven. I absolutely love it. With the endless resources he has at his fingertips, and of course his charismatic personality, Clint Barton will eventually become the leader of this new Absolute Avengers. Clint, codenamed Hawkeye, famous for his bullseye shot that put him on the map with trick shots, where he shot an apple out of an upside down airplane miles high in the sky. This dude does not want to be a hero. Unfortunately for him, when the threat is too big, he's the one who has to step up to the plate. He understands that in order to go back to his life of luxury, he has to eliminate anything that stands in the way of him and his relaxation, wealth, and most importantly to him, his YouTube videos. Yeah, we're making Clint a vlogger. I don't care. It's 2024, almost 2025. Having a vlogger on the Absolute Avengers, especially someone like Clint who would have the most obnoxious personality in this universe, that would be awesome. Also, I think it's about time that Clint Hawkeye gets his name into the spotlight. He becomes a popular character. He never joins S.H.I.E.L.D. in this. He's a trick-shotting, dude perfect, Craven the Hunter-akin assassin hunter that can do anything, that's also famous for vlogging and is like a Red Bull athlete. I'm thinking of like the most obnoxious version of Tony Stark that you could ever see, except it's Clint Barton, and he's the one that has all the money in this universe. Yeah, obviously Tony has money because he has his suits and his Iron Legion, but Clint Barton, he's the one that like has like the Batman level wealth. That's really all I have for this. I don't have like an overarching plot of how each issue with these Absolute Avengers would go and how all their stories would like overlap into each other. I just thought this would be a fun experience, at least for me, to get this out of my head and like just word vomit it onto the internet about what the Absolute Avengers would look like. And if you thought this was awesome, let me know. Make sure to like the video, subscribe if you like this type of content. We're almost at 1,000 subscribers, and that's my goal for the end of the year. So please, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing so we can get closer to that goal towards the end of the year. That way I can be able to pump these videos out faster to you guys. If you didn't like these videos, make sure to let me know. If you thought I was like way off in left field or should have tweaked a part of a character's origin story in this Absolute universe, make sure to let me know. What would you guys have done differently in this video? And most importantly, I hope you guys liked it. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you guys in the next video that is going to be a Mount Rushmore villain tier list for Batman. So if you're looking forward to that, let me know. And as always, take care, guys. Bye.